Malaysia is split in two, but its geography connects half the world. One half sits beside the Strait of Malacca, one of the busiest shipping routes on Earth. The other lies across the South China Sea on the island of Borneo. Together, they form a country of about 34 million people, 9 royal households, major rainforests, palm oil estates, energy fields, and a semiconductor industry embedded in global supply chains. So how did a divided, multicultural federation become one of Southeast Asia's most important trading and manufacturing hubs? Look at the map first. Peninsular Malaysia stretches south from Thailand towards Singapore. East Malaysia consists mainly of Sabah and Sarawak in northern Borneo. The peninsula holds most of the population, the largest cities, and much of the manufacturing base. East Malaysia covers more land and contains major forests, energy resources, indigenous communities, and some of the country's most important biodiversity. The South China Sea separates these regions, but the sea did not simply divide Malaysia. It made the country valuable. Along the peninsula's western coast lies the Strait of Malacca, the narrow maritime corridor linking the Indian Ocean with the South China Sea. Roughly 80,000 ships pass through it in a typical year. Oil from Middle East, manufactured goods from East Asia, raw materials, food, and container traffic all move past Malaysia's doorstep. Malaysia does not control the strait by itself. Indonesia and Singapore are equally important to its operation. But Malaysian ports and coastal cities gained centuries of advantage from standing beside this route. Malacca became a trading center. Penang became a port and later an industrial hub. Port Klang grew into the country's main container gateway. Johor developed beside Singapore and one of Asia's busiest economic corridors. Trade created wealth, but it also created one of Asia's most complex societies. Modern Malaysia cannot be understood as only Malay, Chinese, and Indian. Malays form the largest group, while other Bumiputera communities include many indigenous peoples from Sabah, Sarawak, and the peninsula. Large Chinese and Indian communities developed through older trade networks and migration during British colonial rule. East Malaysia alone contains dozens of languages and identities. Malay is the national language. English is widely used in business and higher education. Mandarin, Cantonese, Tamil, Iban, Kadazandusan, and many other languages remain part of daily life. Islam is the religion of the Federation, while Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, and other faiths are openly practiced. This diversity is a commercial strength. It gives Malaysia cultural and linguistic connections to China, India, the Islamic world, and the English-speaking economy. But diversity also shapes politics, education, business, and debates about fairness. Malaysia's political system is just as unusual. It is a federal constitutional monarchy made up of 13 states and 3 federal territories. 9 states have hereditary rulers. From among them, the Conference of Rulers elects the Yang di Pertuan Agong, or king, generally for a 5-year term. This is often described as a rotating monarchy, but the office is not transferred automatically. A formal election takes place among the rulers, following established conventions. The king performs constitutional duties, while elected governments exercise most executive power. The Federation also has more than one political center. Kuala Lumpur is the national capital and the main financial and commercial city. Putrajaya is the federal administrative center, built to move many government functions away from an increasingly crowded capital. Sabah and Sarawak are not simply ordinary extensions of the peninsula. They entered Malaysia in 1963 under arrangements that recognized their distinct history and interests. Questions involving immigration powers, religion, resources, infrastructure, and the division of federal revenue still shape relations between East Malaysia and the national government. That federal complexity came from history. For centuries, the Malay Peninsula and Borneo were connected to Indian Ocean and South China Sea trade. Hindu and Buddhist influences arrived through commerce. Islam spread later through merchants, courts, and port cities. In the 15th century, the Malacca Sultanate became one of the region's most important trading states. Its position attracted merchants from across Asia, but also European empires. Portugal captured Malacca in 1511. The Dutch took it in 1641. Britain later became the dominant colonial power across much of the peninsula and northern Borneo. British rule expanded tin mining, rubber plantations, ports, and railways. It also encouraged large-scale labor migration, deepening the ethnic and economic divisions that later governments inherited. Japanese occupation during the Second World War shattered the image of permanent European control. The Federation of Malaya became independent in 1957. In 1963, Malaya joined Sabah, Sarawak, and Singapore to form Malaysia. Singapore left the Federation 2 years later. Malaysia then faced a difficult question. How could a new country reduce poverty, balance communities, and build industry without breaking apart? Its first major export economy depended on tin and rubber. Later, palm oil became one of the country's signature commodities. Oil and natural gas supported government revenue and the growth of Petronas. Rubber expertise also helped Malaysia become a major producer of medical and industrial gloves. But the most important transformation happened in electronics. Beginning in the 1970s, Penang attracted multinational manufacturers through export zones, infrastructure, and a workforce trained for industrial production. Over time, Malaysia became especially important in semiconductor assembly, packaging, and testing. That distinction matters. A chip is not made in one factory or one country. Design, wafer fabrication, equipment, materials, packaging, testing, and final assembly can occur across several economies. Malaysia does not control the entire process. Its strength lies mainly in downstream manufacturing and in making those stages difficult to remove from the supply chain. Malaysia now accounts for a significant share of global semiconductor assembly, testing, and packaging. Electrical and electronic products make up a large part of national exports. Penang and nearby Kulim host major investments. While the country is trying to move into advanced packaging, design, equipment, and higher-value engineering. Palm oil made Malaysia famous, but chips may shape its future. The resource economy remains important. Malaysia is one of the world's leading palm oil producers and exporters. The crop generates export income and supports many jobs. Petroleum and natural gas remain central, especially in Sabah, Sarawak, and offshore fields. Yet these strengths bring costs. Palm oil expansion has been linked to habitat loss, land disputes, and pressure on wildlife. Energy revenue faces long-term uncertainty as the world shifts toward lower carbon systems. Commodity prices rise and fall, making income less predictable. The same forests that support timber and plantations also contain some of the planet's richest ecosystems. Malaysian Borneo is home to orangutans, proboscis monkeys, clouded leopards, and many lesser-known species. Mount Kinabalu rises above Sabah, while coral reefs and island environments support tourism and fishing. Forest cover remains extensive, but a green map can hide fragmentation. Roads, plantations, logging, dams, and urban growth can divide habitats even when many trees remain. Malaysia's challenge is not choosing between development and conservation once. It is negotiating that conflict repeatedly. Economically, the country now stands close to another transition. Malaysia is wealthier than most of its regional neighbors, but is not yet classified as a high-income economy by the World Bank. Current assessments suggest it could reach that threshold near the end of this decade if growth and reform continue. Crossing a statistical line, however, is easier than becoming a fully advanced economy. Malaysia still depends heavily on foreign technology, imported expertise, lower-skilled migrant labor, and manufacturing stages with limited profit margins. Many highly educated Malaysians build careers in Singapore, Australia, Britain, or elsewhere. Productivity and wages must rise together if the country wants to avoid remaining trapped between low-cost manufacturing and advanced innovation. This is where social policy becomes part of the economic story. After deadly ethnic violence in 1969, the government introduced the new economic policy in 1971. It aimed to reduce poverty and address economic imbalances associated with ethnicity. Over time, Bumiputera preferences influenced access to education, housing, business opportunities, and ownership. Supporters argue that these policies expanded participation and helped preserve political stability. Critics argue that long-term preferences can encourage patronage, weaken competition, and contribute to talent leaving the country. Both views point to the same problem. Malaysia must pursue fairness without sacrificing performance. Simple claims that one ethnic group controls the economy or another receives all the benefits hide large inequalities within every community. Public services show another mixed picture. Malaysia has a tax-funded public healthcare system that provides highly subsidized treatment, alongside a large private sector. Public care is often affordable, but it is not literally free, and waiting times, staffing, regional access, and treatment options vary. Education is similarly layered. Public schooling is widely accessible, while universities charge fees and operate under different funding arrangements. National schools use Malay as the main language, but Chinese and Tamil primary schools remain important parts of the system. English continues to matter in business and technology. This complexity is visible in Malaysia's cities. Kuala Lumpur represents finance, services, national ambition, and international migration. The Petronas Twin Towers were once the tallest buildings on Earth and remain a powerful symbol of the industrial confidence of the 1990s. Penang combines Georgetown's trading history with one of Southeast Asia's major electronics clusters. Malacca preserves the architectural layers of the Sultanate, Portuguese, Dutch, and British periods. Johor Bahru draws energy from its proximity to Singapore and is becoming increasingly important in manufacturing, logistics, and digital infrastructure. Kota Kinabalu and Kuching represent a different Malaysia, one where indigenous identities, natural resources, federal bargaining, and distance from the peninsula are impossible to ignore. Tourism connects these worlds. Visitors come for city food, historic streets, tropical islands, diving around Sabah, Langkawi's beaches, and Borneo's forests. But Malaysia's importance goes far beyond holidays. Its greatest advantage is connection. It connects the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. It connects resource exports to advanced manufacturing. It connects Muslim, Chinese, Indian, indigenous, and Western commercial worlds. It connects Singapore's high-cost economy with a larger base of land, labor, and industry. But connection alone does not guarantee success. Geography creates opportunity. Institutions determine who captures it. Malaysia must move its semiconductor sector toward more valuable activities. It must raise productivity and wages without losing investment. It must balance Bumiputera opportunity with competition and social trust. It must divide resources more credibly between the peninsula, Sabah, and Sarawak. And it must protect forests that are valuable precisely because they cannot be rebuilt quickly. Malaysia's real strength is not palm oil, petroleum, tourism, or chips alone. It is the ability to bring trade routes, cultures, resources, and technology supply chains together in one strategic place. The question is whether it can turn that position into a high-income future or remain caught between commodities and advanced industry. Can Malaysia complete that transition without weakening the diversity and natural wealth that made it valuable in the first place? If you enjoy seeing countries beyond the stereotypes, subscribe to Geologic.